Did the rush to endgame kill the MMORPG genre? Let's take a few minutes and talk about that. So I was browsing Reddit yesterday when I happened across a thread titled "Rush to Endgame Killed MMORPG." That in turn made me want to go ahead and do a video dedicated to this topic to see what you guys think. I actually touched on this a little bit in my perfect MMORPG video, but I don't know, I wanted to talk about it in much greater detail. Now, the initial discussion was sparked by the user named andradajimcarlo. In it, he went on to say that in this age, whenever a new MMO is released, let's say, for example, Astellia Online, players tend to just rush to endgame as fast as possible without really enjoying anything the developers put into the game overall. They disregard the story, they skip by all of the side quests, they have no idea of any of the backstory for the world that they're actually playing in. Everyone just wants to get to the end as fast as they can because they want to be stronger than anyone else as soon as possible. And I'll be honest, that is pretty much true. A lot of players seem to have the mentality that hitting endgame first means that they're going to have some kind of advantage over other players. They will be able to begin running dungeons sooner, run raids before the majority of other players, and even go as far as establishing the overall economy for months to come. But this in turn leads to the very same people complaining that there's nothing to do. And this isn't a small percentage of players, mind you. A lot of people have that rush to endgame mentality. Naturally, I went ahead and began scrolling through the comments. Yeah, all 400 of them, because I was curious how people either defended and justified the rush to endgame or why they disagreed with it. I then went and saw a comment from private server programmer stating that he believed levels specifically were the issue. In his or her, I don't know their gender, opinion, the best games have no levels and instead levels inhibit player freedom. This is 100% correct. But at the same time, it is not something that you can really do much in terms of fixing. See, while levels are what developers use currently to gate content, if level restrictions were removed, other restrictions would be imposed. See, instead of rushing to max level, they might instead employ an item level system like in a lot of MMOs that have raids. So instead of rushing to, let's say for argument's sake, level 100, you would instead be rushing to item level 100 so you can begin participating in the very dungeons and raids that you were rushing to max level for. Yes, levels themselves are the issue currently, but again, they are just the current issue. It would take on a completely different form if levels were removed from MMOs, and that would merely offer one less thing for players to actually attempt to obtain in game. I then continued scrolling through the comments and actually learned something pretty interesting. The vast majority of users could arguably agree on one specific issue forcing them to rush to endgame, and that is the overall uninspired, uninteresting story. Now, I am not under the illusion that people actually want to play through the story, nor do they want to read all the side quests in pretty much the majority of MMOs. Let's be completely blunt and honest here. Currently, MMOs have really generic, really basic storylines and side quests consisting of something along the lines of go kill, like 5 boars, or go talk to the dude standing right next to me and tell him that he owes me money. These aren't quests that are going to motivate me, let alone other players, to want to engage with the world. And I get it. I completely understand. But just because the majority function that way doesn't mean that they all do. I mean, some of the funniest, most entertaining quest lines in WoW were side quests. And if you care at all about the world in Final Fantasy XIV, you're gonna want to do side quests. They add so much flavor and so much personality to the game that you're just completely missing out on if you decide to skip it. Well, I mean, they agreed on story, and then the next most common complaint was challenge. The complaint in question was that the game offered no challenge during the leveling process, only providing a spike in difficulty once you hit endgame. This meant that to fully enjoy the game, to fully learn your character, and to continue to improve, you needed to be actively participating in endgame content, otherwise you were going around like one-shotting gray-named monsters that offered no challenge at all. I get the need for a challenge as well. Back in the early 2000s, which is when I began playing MMOs for the first time, they were much more difficult. You couldn't go out and group together like 10 or 15 monsters and just mow them all down in 2 to 3 AoEs. Hell, I have always mained a melee or a mage class, and as a melee class, back in the early 2000s, we didn't even really have AoEs. Like the majority of the time, the low to mid-level questing process involved you mashing like the same 1 or 2 skills, single target skills, mind you, over and over again. And while I have no problem with how combat is handled in MMOs these days, the difficulty, the sense of danger is no longer there when playing. So then not only do quests and the commonly uninspired story bore people, but often there's absolutely no challenge provided that makes even combat a bit stale. So I spent probably almost an hour reading through the thread, and what I gathered generally from all of this is that the issue here is more the fact that vertical progression is making content on the road to endgame, in whatever form endgame takes, obsolete. I mean, let's be real here. For most players, or even more so, in most MMOs, how many actually offer truly interesting content outside of endgame content at level cap? How much content is doable in large groups when not at max level? Content currently is created with the understanding that players want to feel powerful. They need to feel powerful, and as such, there is a necessity for vertical progression. The focus of MMORPGs is now on getting the player to max level, where you proceed to spam endgame dungeons and raids or even PvP to increase your overall power. This in turn leads to the next dungeon, the next raid, until you've hit a high enough item level that you've cleared all the content there is to partake of. Then you get disappointed because outside of rerunning the same content over and over, after rushing to get to max level as fast as you can, you find yourself burned out and bored with the game that you've invested time into. But I mean, that's just an issue created largely by the average player mentality, along with the developers creating pretty basic worlds for players to explore. There is no single party at fault here. But remember, the purpose of playing an MMO is supposed to be about the journey, the things you see, the people you meet, the accomplishments you make, and the freedom you have, not the overall destination. That comes after the fact. But that's just my opinion, my impressions of the rush to endgame mentality. What do you guys think? Do you believe that this is partially responsible for the decline of the genre? Let me know down in the comments below and let's talk about it. Anyway guys, that is it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.